It's week one of the 2025 fantasy football season. And here at The Catch, I'm here to remind you that we care about you guys who still play with defensive special team slots in your fantasy football league. So you know exactly what we're going to do. We're going to break down our top defenses to start and stream in week one of the 2025 fantasy football season to help you guys dominate week one. All right, we're kicking the video off with the Denver Broncos. No surprise here. This is the team that is touted to be the very best defensive unit in all of football and fantasy football going into the 2025 season. And they are going to start the year with two absolute bangers. They're at home in week one against rookie quarterbacks, and looking ahead in week two, although they are on the road, they get Danny Dimes and company going to face the Indianapolis Colts. But let's focus and hone in here on week one. Obviously, the Denver Broncos at this point sitting at 99% rostered. This is a team that if you guys play with defensive special team slots, you had to go out and draft, and they were definitely the first team drafted in almost every single league out there, right? So if you own them, you already know that you're starting them, but there's no way they're not going to make the week one video. I think they are an absolute lock for a double-digit fantasy performance in week one, going up against a quarterback in his very first NFL start in Cam Ward. And don't get me wrong, there are some playmakers on this Titans offense that I like Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley. I think there's other guys that could step up, but I still think Cam Ward is more than likely going to have some struggles in this first start. And this is a Broncos unit that was the #1 scoring defense in fantasy football last year. 186 total fantasy points, 63 sacks, 12 forced fumbles, 8 fumble recoveries, 15 interceptions, and 5 touchdowns. And the craziest thing about the Broncos defense is that they got better in the offseason. They spent early draft capital on a cornerback to line up next to Pat Surtain. They had some big signings and free agency as well. This unit is pretty much loaded top to bottom. They're going to have a monster week one performance. I know if you own them, you are already going to play them anyways, but they are my absolute lock for the must-start defense for week one of the 2025 fantasy football season. All right, let's take a look at a team that could be out there on the waiver wire for you guys to pick up. That is the Arizona Cardinals, coming in at 47% rostered. I know there's some risk here associated with what was a pretty porous defense last year, right in the middle in terms of fantasy points scored at number 15 overall. Last year's 113 fantasy points, 41 sacks, 16 forced fumbles, 8 fumble recoveries, 9 picks on the season. No defensive touchdowns last year, but ultimately the upside is way too high in week one. This is one of my very favorite streams for you guys to hit the waiver wires for in week one. They are on the road here. Don't always love that when it comes to defensive streaming, but they're facing the Saints, touted to be the very worst team in all of the NFL in 2025. We know that Spencer Rattler has been named the starting quarterback for the Saints, but for me, it really wasn't going to matter. If it was Tyler Shuck, if it was Spencer Rattler, I was still going to encourage you guys to go out and start the Cardinals defense. Now, don't get me wrong. Once again, there are still playmakers on that Saints offense. Guys like Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. You never know. Like I said, home game for the Saints. But this is one of those upside swings that you guys have to take. If you're one of those teams who's looking to stream defensive special team slots throughout the year, this is the #1 team that I want you guys to go after. And quite frankly, I was actually pretty high initially going into the season on the Cardinals defense, but they did end up with some unfortunate injuries throughout the course of training camp in the preseason. And now I'm kind of holding my horses a bit. But here in week one, I think they are an absolutely great start. They have a pretty soft schedule for the next couple weeks as well. Week 2 at home against the Panthers. I don't love it, don't hate it. Could be a decent outing. Week 3, they're on the road at the Niners. Don't really like that. Week 4, they host Seattle. Week 5, Tennessee at home against rookie Cam Ward, although maybe he has a couple weeks to warm up. Not quite like week 1 like we just talked about. Then week 6, they're on the road against the Colts. Danny Dimes, Anthony Richardson, who knows by then. So I do think the Cardinals will be a decent defense to own for the first couple weeks of the fantasy season. But here in week 1, the upside lies with streaming them. They can absolutely have a big performance against Spencer Rattler and what is pretty much the worst team in the NFL here in week 1. I am so confident in this Arizona Cardinals defense this week that I am headed straight to Underdog to take the over on Spencer Rattler to throw a touchdown here in week 1. And Underdog is giving all new users who sign up on Underdog using promo code THECATCH for week 1 of the season a free pick 'em on Underdog. Take that free pick 'em. Take the over on Rattler to throw an interception against the Cardinals defense, and you'll automatically double your cash entry. And on top of that, new users who sign up on Underdog using promo code THECATCH are going to get a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. And as soon as you play through $5 on Underdog as a new user using that promo code THECATCH, the link is down below, Underdog is also automatically going to give you a free $50 to use towards week 1's action. Let's move along to another highly rostered team. That would be the Minnesota Vikings, coming in at 91% rostered overall. This was the second highest scoring defensive team in fantasy football last year. 169 total fantasy points scored, 49 sacks, 10 forced fumbles, 7 fumble recoveries, 24 interceptions, 3 defensive touchdowns last year. Now, look at this week 1 matchup on the road against Chicago. I've kind of revamped Chicago unit. Caleb Williams in his sophomore season with new head coach Ben Johnson. A lot of weapons around him, an improved offensive line. I don't think I'm extremely bullish on the Vikings for like a really high upside type day. But when we look to Caleb Williams' rookie season, I mean, this was a quarterback who we could stream against, who did have that interception potential on a week in, week out basis. And I think that the Vikings, who averaged 9.9 fantasy points per game last year, could come in around that mark, 8, 9, 10 points. I think that they have a pretty safe floor going into week 1. I don't know if they have a tremendous amount of upside once again, but I think what we have to remember about the Vikings is that while the roster, isn't like anything that stands out and is crazy built like the Broncos roster or some of the other teams that we'll maybe talk about in this video, right? This is a great system, and this system allows for a lot of blitzes, a lot of potential turnovers on a regular basis. This was a team at times last year that would give up a lot of total points, but they would find a way to walk away with good fantasy outings because of the ability to get sacks and to get turnovers. So I think week 1 against Chicago, I mean, if you own the Vikings, you likely drafted them. They are very highly rostered. Keep the faith here. Not a high ceiling, but a safe floor in week 1. You drafted them, start them. Then we look ahead a little bit. Weeks 2 and 3 at home don't look great. We got the Falcons, maybe an opportunity there against Michael Penix. Week 3 at home against the Bengals. No, thank you. But then weeks 4 and 5, although they are on the road before the week 6 bye, they're going to face Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh in week 4. And then whoever, Joe Flacco, Dalen Gabriel, whoever it is in week 5 for the Browns on the road. So I do think that they're absolutely worth holding on to and have a very safe floor in week 1. Don't forget, this system is a very good system when it comes to fantasy scoring. Moving along to another streaming option, that'll be the Miami Dolphins. This is the lowest rostered team on today's list, sitting at 5% rostered. And I'm going to go ahead and say straight up, I think this is the worst defense on today's list. I was very hesitant to even put them on the list, but you guys know how we do every single week. We're going to have these upside swing options at the defensive special team spot. That is teams that are going to be out there on the waiver wire, because if you are streaming defenses, there will be weeks where you're kind of looking at the options and maybe there's not a lot of great options. You need to grab one of these teams who at least gives you a chance. This was the defense 27 last year in fantasy football, and they're worse on paper than they were last year. Let's see. Last year, they had just 86 fantasy points, 35 sacks, 7 forced fumbles, 6 fumble recoveries, 10 interceptions. They are on the road. Once again, something I don't love when it comes to defensive special teams streaming, but they're getting Danny Dimes and company against the Colts. And don't get me wrong, I don't feel great about this one. It's shaky. But when Daniel Jones is the starting quarterback, that potential for turnovers is going to be there. So this is just kind of my one I'm throwing out there. If you guys decided to stream defensive teams this year and you're looking for an option because you've been left with nothing and you don't feel comfortable going into the week, or maybe you just don't feel like you have an option that gives you a lot of upside, hey, there's a lot of risk with this decision, but there's also a lot of upside that could pay off by starting the Dolphins in week 1 against the Colts. Next up, I want to talk about the Houston Texans, who are sitting at 77% rostered at the time I am recording this, and they were the defense 8 in fantasy football last year. 143 fantasy points total, 49 sacks, 10 forced fumbles, 7 fumble recoveries, 19 interceptions, and 3 defensive touchdowns. And I'm going to go ahead and say, for me, when it comes to the Texans, I'm leaving them on here because we still, at the time I'm recording this, have the kind of murky situation around Matthew Stafford. I honestly feel like Matthew Stafford's going to play week 1, so I don't want to put that too much into the equation here, but I will say if Jimmy Garoppolo and or Stetson Bennett's the starting quarterback, the Texans' upside is going to be massive in week 1, even on the road. I think we all know that. I think they would shoot from 77% rostered way up, and a lot of leagues that have defensive special teams, they're going to be rostered anyway. So just keep that in mind. Like, I think that they are a safe floor defense going into week 1, even if it's Matthew Stafford. You know, at the end of the day, Matthew Stafford's still banged up. He does have playmakers around him, but he's still a veteran quarterback basically at the end of his career. And it's not like Matthew Stafford was absolutely lighting it up last year. You know, there were still a lot of low ceiling games for Stafford last year. It's still a great offensive system. Sean McVay is the head coach. Puka, Kyron Williams, Devontae Adams, we all know what's there. So I'm not discrediting them in any ways, but I still think that regardless, the Texans, if you own them, you drafted them, they are a must-start defense in week 1. There is still the potential for a more porous game out of Stafford in his first start this year because he's missed so much of training camp and the preseason. But once again, if we get word, which I don't think we're going to, but if we get word that Stafford is not starting in week 1, then you are firing up the Texans with confidence. And even if Stafford is the starter, they are a very safe option as we approach week 1. Last but not least, another very highly rostered team that's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, coming in at 97% rostered. The defense 3 last year in fantasy football, 158 fantasy points, 40 sacks, 18 forced fumbles, 12 fumble recoveries, 17 interceptions, and 1 defensive touchdown. Listen, this is a team that if you drafted them, you need to feel good about, right? This is a team that is going to give you a safe floor on a week in, week out basis. They have the ability to stop the run. They're a very good defense from top to bottom. And in week 1, although they are on the road, they're playing the New York Jets. And listen, all offseason long, I've been a fan of, you know, the values of Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson and the Jets running backs throughout draft season, but I don't feel so good about them in week 1. I think the Steelers defense is going to be in line for a very good day. And while they don't always present the most upside, they give you that safe floor on a weekly basis. So maybe even if the Jets are able to break through in this game, you're still going to come out with a good floor, is my belief, if you own the Steelers. They're really one of those teams that you're going to start on a week in, week out basis. But overall, this matchup between the Jets and the Steelers in week 1, I don't really see it being a game with a lot of offensive firepower. I see this being a matchup with the new head coach Aaron Glenn of the Jets being defensive minded, and then Mike Tomlin, the Steelers. We know what we're going to get with that team, right? I see this being a low scoring affair that has the potential for turnover, really, for both teams. But I'm not confident enough to start the Jets defense, who were basically atrocious from a fantasy standpoint last year. So if you own the Steelers, I know you're already rolling with them, but have confidence. This is a good week 1 spot, even on the road, and this is a team that you absolutely have to start as we approach the first week of the 2025 fantasy football season. And that'll do it for today's video. There are your must-start defenses and streams as we approach week 1 of the 2025 fantasy football season. Guys, on the way out, do me a big favor and hit the like button. I want to see how many likes we can get on the very first defensive video of the year, one of your guys' favorite videos from week to week. And we will be putting out this video every single Monday morning for you guys who play in defensive special teams leagues. And while you're down there, if you guys have any fantasy football comments whatsoever, start, sits, trades, waiver wire questions, whatever it may be, if you guys need other options at the defensive special teams slot, I do have other teams in mind, or maybe there was a team missing from this video. I'll let you guys know why I did not include them in the video. But whatever you guys need, please drop in the comment section down below. I will answer every single question on this video. If you guys are new to the channel, this is all we do here all year long. Free fantasy football content, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. If you're into that, be sure to subscribe on the way out. With that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.